the Arch Gaming Network is proud to bring you this board game review. Now here's your host, Sean Smith.
Hello, and thank you for stopping by. Today we're taking a look at the game Flatline by Kane Klinko and published by Renegade. Today we're taking a look at the game Flatline, designed by Kane Klinko and published by Renegade Games Studios.
Nailed it.
Now, Flatline is a cooperative game for 1 to 5 players, which is kind of odd because if you're playing one player, it's not that cooperative.
I don't know.
But anyway, it features a dice rolling mechanism and has press your luck. The game takes place in the Fuse universe. And this game is actually a prequel to the game Fuse, which I personally have not played. It's been one of those games that's always been on my wish list, but I've just not gotten around to play it. I really enjoy cooperative games, and after seeing this game, I thought this looks fun, this looks intense, so let's give it a try. Now, in Flatline, you are on your ships, and you are in your medical bay, and you have patients that are coming in that are needing to be treated. The goal is for you and your partners to try to save a required number of patients to win the game. There's a couple of different ways for you to lose. If you run out of power cubes, or if you let too many emergencies build up, you can lose the game. Players are going to have their own set of dice. Everyone is going to roll, and then you're going to have 1 minute to decide what you're going to do with them. Are you going to try to save a patient? Are you going to try and get more energy cubes? Are you going to try and take care of these emergencies that are stacking up? It's very intense, and you need to be able to act quickly because you are under a 1 minute timer per round. So, will you be quick enough to be able to save all of these patients, or will they just flatline? You see what I did there? Anyway, let's take a look at the setup and the game, and I'll give you my thoughts on it on the other side. Okay, you set up Flatline. You're going to put the board together. It just goes together, kind of like a puzzle piece there. You do have a centerpiece that has kind of a spinning item on it here. And there'll be a one-time setup with the first time you get the game. To attach the spinner, it's really easy. But then you just place it here. It doesn't matter where you place the spinner part as of yet. Now what you're going to do is, depending on the number of players, and we're going to set up for a 2-player game, and we're going to play standard level. That means you have all of these patient cards, okay? These are the patients in the game, and we're going to take 7 of them, all right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wow, I grabbed 7 right off the bat. I'm a genius.
Wow.
Anyway, you're going to take 4 of these just at random, and you're going to place them around the board here. And then you can just place the other 3 off to the side. And you have a bunch of these tiles here that, as you're curing these patients, you're going to be covering up sections of them. There's a supply of those that you'll also place off to the side. You're going to find a round marker, and let me grab a different one here. Now, each of these round markers. These are for the energy. At the bottom it tells you how many players it's for. And this is for 5 players. The one set up here is for 1 or 2 players. They're double-sided, so you have kind of an extreme mode. And then your, whoopsie, your normal mode. And you just place it here, and then you take these green cubes, and you're just going to fill in each spot. This is a timer for the game. There will be 2 extra green cubes left. You'll place one of those in each of these sections here. You have these shutdown tokens. Just place those on the board somewhere. Then you have these emergency cards, all right, and these will do all sorts of things, bad things to you, mostly bad. Some can actually help you, but you'll shuffle those and then just place them here by the emergency track. Each player is going to take all of the dice of their color. Now in a 2-player game, you get to keep 7 of the 8, and you'll place 1 off to the side. You may be able to gain that later, but you'll keep the rest. You have the emergency dice, these white dice, just put those by the emergency track. Figure out who's going to be the chief medical officer. This is basically the person who is going to perform, you know, the duties of the round, keeping the round going throughout the game. And this card here helps you to know the various phases of a turn. And you are now ready to play Flatline. All right, the object of the game is to cure all of the necessary patients based on the difficulty level that you're playing. In our case, we need to clear 7 of these patients. The way that you can lose is if this timer runs out, so this last cube is removed, you lose. Or if this track here fills up with emergencies that were not taken care of. And we'll talk about how those happen in a moment. Now, some things about the board. Along this side, you have an emergency track, and we'll see how that works here. Then you have, these are stat cards, emergency cards. These are cards that you need to take care of as soon as possible during that round, actually, because anything that you don't clear from this side of the board, they're going to go over here. This side of the board are failed emergency cards, and if this fills up, you'll lose the game. It's important to note, in a 1 to 2 player game, you get 4 chances at it, but in a 3 to 5 player game, you only get 3. Now we'll see in a minute, when you clear stat cards from here, they're going to give you a bonus, usually just a one-time bonus. When you clear them, you're able to put them along here and store them, and then you are able to use these later during the game. You have slots for 4. Up here you have a reroll track, and that'll come in handy if you need to re-roll one of your dice, and because you need a certain color or a symbol, someone will be able to give up one of their dice so that they can roll one of their dice.
No, dear, that's wrong.
In a 1 to 3 player game, you can do that 5 times in a round. 4 players, this many, 5, you can do that 3 times in a round. Okay, here you have your charging stations. These will allow you to pick up additional rounds of play. They're limited, you only have 2 of them. And what you need to do is roll the dice. In a 1 or 2 player game, you'll need these 3 filled up, 3 players, these 4 filled up, and so on. Now, on this spinner here, you're going to take the one that has the diamond, and you're going to place it at the beginning of one of the patients. All right, and we'll set it here. And what happens is when you cure a patient, all right, when you heal them, whatever this symbol, whatever section it is pointing to, that is either the bonus or the negative effect that'll happen. If it's green, that means a bonus. So for example, a player will get to pick up an extra die. But here, if we cured this patient, a player, we would add an extra emergency card. All right, so let's talk about how a round will work. Again, the chief medical officer will have this card, and this is to just help that person know how a round goes. A round is broken up into 3 phases, and the first and third phase are broken up into a few steps. The first phase is the pre-countdown, and the first thing you're going to do is lose a power cube. So you're going to take one of these power cubes and just remove it from the game. Now you're going to notice on these power cards here, they have numbers underneath each of the boxes. That is how many emergency cards you have to draw. So in this case, we have to draw 5 of these emergency cards. So you're just going to draw them, and we're not going to cover all of them, of course, but we'll go over a few of them. So this emergency card says you would add an additional emergency card, and it's just going to go into slot number 1 here, and then you'll draw the next one. Now the next one is a stat card, and you know this because it has the orange here at the top. Now stat cards are not placed in this line. Instead, they're going to be placed over here, and of course you can place them anywhere you want. Now this particular stat card says here that no triggers with a red light are activated for treating a patient. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, we talked about earlier how when these things are pointing at, say, a -1 like this one, if you were to play this card and you heal this patient, it would stop you from having to add another emergency card to the track. We'll draw another emergency card, and this one is a regression. Put that at number 2. What that one means is, let's say you had a patient that was partially healed here. If you activated this emergency card, you would have to remove one of these. We've drawn 3 so far. Now we'll draw our 4th one. This is a tactical decision. It says do not turn the spinner this round. So if you kind of like where the things are pointing, you could play the card and keep this from spinning at the end of the round. And then our 5th card is called Undermanned. And this symbol, this means if this is activated, every player will lose one of their dice.
Oh no!
Yikes. All right, the next step in the pre-countdown phase is to roll the emergency dice. So you're going to roll those, and it's a 5 and a 6. That's a terrible example, so we're going to say it's a 1 and a 6. All right, so you're going to place the 1 or the 5 there and the 1 on there, and now you have to activate whatever the emergencies are on this emergency track. So this means that we have to add 1 additional emergency card. So that is another emergency card. Now, since there was nothing here, we got lucky. We don't need to worry about that. Nothing was activated here. It's important to note, on this emergency track here, not only can you have 1 row of these cards, but you can have a 2nd row of these cards. All right, so it's important to keep this track as clear as you can, because when you activate a spot, you are going to have to activate both of these cards, whatever it has landed on. Now, if this ever gets filled up with 2 rows, you'll no longer draw from this deck. However, you're going to be getting punished quite terribly every round if you're not clearing these out as well. Now, if you ever activate a card that says to shut down the reroll or the charging station track, you're just going to cover it up for that round. The next step in the pre-countdown phase is the planning. This is where all of the players can openly discuss what are the priorities that they want to take care of during this round. You know, looking at our board here, these are obviously 2 things that you're going to want to clear up as quickly as possible, because if you don't clear these up by the end of the round, they are going to go over here. We'll be turning them over. Plus, by clearing these up, you will need to, you'll get that special bonus that these things also afford. You also need to be mindful of the patients that are out here, and by curing them, what you're going to get as a bonus. You also need to take care of these emergencies. You know, I'm looking at them, and right now this is probably the most dangerous. This is everybody loses a die. You don't want to have that happen, so you'll probably want to get rid of these. Now, after all the players are satisfied with their discussion, it is now time to go to the countdown phase. Now, you get 1 minute, you'll roll your dice, you'll have 1 minute to place the dice onto the necessary spots to be able to either heal a patient, do a recharging station, re-roll, clearing emergencies, etc. Now, Renegade has an app that you can download that will add some thematics to the game, as it gives you a 1 minute countdown timer, but of course you can use any timer app that you have to set that 1 minute. Okay, to clear anything from the game, you have to place the required number of dice onto a particular spot by the end of the round. So if you wanted a recharging station and you were playing a 2-player game, that means you would need to have, you know, all 3 of these filled up by the end of the round. If you didn't, these go away. You did not capture this particular, you know, energy cube. The same thing goes for the patient. So you would need to have something completely filled up. One of the sections completely filled by the end of the round before that timer goes out. And if you do, then you're going to clear that part of the patient. You don't have to do the whole card during one round, but for every particular line, you will have to have it completely filled. If you fall short, you don't get to keep the dice on there for the next round. They get removed. So what do these symbols mean on the various patients and the cards that you see out here? Well, let's take this one, for example. So these first 2 have kind of a life preserver looking thing on them. And what this means is that all players must place either a green or a white one. When you see the double dice, one on top of the other, that means you can play either or. But this is the important symbol. That means all players must place at least a green or a white on there to clear that section. Same goes for here. When you have a section like this, a single person, that means only one person can clear that, and then another person can clear that. All right, so only one player. Now there's only 1 die to get, so it makes sense, but one player would have to clear this and another player would have to clear that. And then down here you see there are 3 players. That means any number of players can place the required number of dice on this to cure that section of the patient. Now, if you see one that has just 2, that means that only 2 players, and 2 players must complete this section. 1 player is not allowed to complete it by himself. You'll need 2 players. If you're playing with 3 to 5 players, again, only 2 players can place on that section. Some of the cards have symbols on them as well. This particular card says that you will need 4 dice, 4 of any kind of dice. It doesn't matter. Any number of players can play on this card. You just need 4 dice to get rid of it. All right, and for this card, all players must play 1 die of any kind on here. They don't have to match, they just have to put 1 each. And then this card requires 3 of the same. There are equals between each of the boxes, so that means you would need 3 of whatever symbol you wanted to put on that die, or card, I'm sorry. All right, we'll go ahead and fast forward through this round to take you to what happens on the other side of the countdown. All right, so during that 1 minute, the players rolled their dice and then they started to place them out there. It's important to note that when you are placing your dice, once you've placed one, you're not supposed to move it. So make sure you know where you're going before you place the die, because once they are on there, they're locked in. After the 1 minute is up, we move to the resolution phase. The first step is to resolve your cards. So we have this card was taken. This needed just 4 dice. The players got together. This now will just go to a discard pile. If you ever run out of emergency cards, you'll shuffle the discard pile and start anew. The players also completed these 2 cards over here. So they will get to take these now and place them over here to be used later whenever they want for their positive effect. If they had not completed one of them, they would have gone over here and they'd be one closer to losing. Next, we're going to resolve patient cards and also the charging station. So we see on this patient, this required all players to place either a pink or an orange. One player played a pink, one player played an orange, so that was successful. So that part of the patient gets healed and covered up. This required one patient to play blue, one patient to play pink, so that was also healed, and so that part is covered up as well. The recharging station, trying to get an extra cube, didn't realize we needed one more, so this was incomplete, doesn't count, so those get removed from the game. Or not from the game, but removed from the board, back to the player for the next round. Since no patients were healed, none of the bonuses that these were pointing to will be taken advantage of, or any of the negative effects, of course, either. Now, the last thing you do in the round is you will rotate this to the first slot of the next player or patient clockwise. So this is now pointing to an empty spot. This is pointing to a negative spot, and a nothing spot. And now you're going to start a new round. Again, you're going to take the one out, the cube out of the power. You're going to add 3 more. Now, when you add these up, you're going to start with the blank spot and continue taking the 3 cards. Here is the second card, and then the third card. This one, woo, one player loses 2 dice.
Really?
Gotta get rid of that one, that's for sure.
Oh yeah!
And just know, if you, let's say you had, 2 rows of cards here, and this one got taken, you'll slide this one down, and then start filling in again, starting from 1 to 6. You'll again go through the rest of the pre-countdown phase, the countdown and the resolution, and you'll continue playing round after round until either this runs out of time, or you have cured the number of patients needed, or this gets filled up with unresolved stat emergencies. And that is how you play Flatline. Okay, so that is Flatline. And let's talk about the components first. You have, all the different dice. The dice are good quality, and they're great looking. They went with symbols on them instead of numbers, so it kind of adds to the theme of that alien and being out in outer space feel and theme to the game. I like that the game is a prequel. I like that the game is a sequel.
Nailed it.
To Fuse. I think in the opener I called it a prequel. This is actually a sequel, so my apologies earlier. But I do like it, set in the same universe, and kind of follows along with the story following Fuse. So the components, the cardboard is very thick. The game board itself is puzzly. You had to put it together and then put that center spinner piece in the middle, and I think it works well. I do think you want to be careful when taking the board apart, that where it connects, kind of the puzzle pieces connect. You may start to see a little fraying on those, so just take care when doing that. The components themselves, I don't know what it is. I cannot fit them back in the box properly now that I have things put together in that. It's a tight squeeze. I wish they would have maybe made the box just a little larger, so when it comes to packing, it would pack a little more easily. The artwork in the game is great. I think they did a fantastic job there. Now, as far as the gameplay, it is intense and it is difficult.
I'm not afraid.
It is a co-op game.
I was born for this.
So I really enjoy that. But we've been playing on training mode, and we are having a difficult time beating it. There is a lot going on during a round, and when that timer starts, it gets very intense trying to figure out everything that you're going to do. I think the game does scale well. Now, I haven't played it as a one-player game, but I've played several other player counts, And I think it works well. With the lower count, you get an extra die. In the higher counts, you lose a die, and you have more patience that you have to heal before you can win the game. I think it is probably a little bit better with the higher count. It just feels easier because you have all those extra dice out there. I like the emergency cards, at least the ones that have the benefits on them. Yes, you do have to take care of those immediately because you don't want those to build up, because that could be a losing condition for you. But the benefits that you can get for completing them are very helpful and necessary many times in the game. Now, having the other emergency cards, those really stink. And, you know, making sure that you don't build up 2 columns of those emergency cards, because it will really start to wallop you in a hurry. So trying to avoid those is very important. You want to make sure when you're playing this game that you take your time during that strategy session that you can have, where you are discussing with all of your helpers, your other players, to really make sure you know what strategy you're going to employ this round. It's very important. Of course, all that can get thrown out the window when you roll the dice and you don't get, you know, a lot of people don't get exactly what you need. So luck does play an important factor in this game. As far as the timer goes, man, 1 minute, that's ridiculous. There is so much to consider with the emergency cards, the stat cards. Are you going for another power cube? You're trying to clear up patience. I mean, there is so much going on. That minute flies by. So I have to kind of admit that we, as a house rule, have gone to 1.5 minutes. Maybe as we play a little more, we'll try that minute again, but even at that 1.5 minutes, it is difficult. So I really love co-op games. This game is no exception. I love the intensity. I love that working together, the satisfying feeling of being able to clear those patients, clear up those emergency cards, feeling that sense of accomplishment from round to round, trying to avoid the negative effects is great. It is intense. It is difficult, but it is beatable. So I think they've done a great job here. For me, I give this game an 8. Now, if you've enjoyed this review, hit the thumbs up button below. Also, click on subscribe to check out our other great videos. And once again, I thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for visiting the Arch Gaming Network. For more great content, check us out at archgamingnetwork.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook.